Hello, everyone. Good evening from the Great Plains of Illinois. It's June 2nd, 2026. It's another typical Tuesday in the age of ignorance. Has anybody else noticed that it's very difficult to figure out what's going on in the world lately? You turn on the news or you listen to the radio, and there's one story that's being told, and there's facts to support it, and there's anecdotes, and there's confirmed reports that corroborate the story, and you then hear a much different story with different facts and different circumstances, and you're kind of left just wondering, what is actually going on. And the two stories that I hear being told at the loudest volume, they both cannot be true. By definition, they are mutually exclusive. So if one story is true, then the other story is not true. And if this other story is true, then the first story that's being told is definitely not true. So let's check in with the news, and we will uncover more of what one story is trying to tell us. And the headline is: AI Groundhog announces new all time high mode for the market. Hedges are obsolete, it says. Market's never wrong. AI never sleeps. Losses never happen. You can see that the media is in an uproar about this. They're ecstatic. The things have never been better. We've optimized peace, to the max. So don't worry about all the escalation of war headlines. There's a peace deal coming soon. We won't worry about, the Cushing facility that's about to empty here in, less than a day. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We have plenty of oil somewhere, I guess is the idea, although we have 8.5 billion some odd barrels of commercial stockpiles of crude around the world, but yet, the operational inventories make it such that only about 800 million of that is actually usable, right? So we won't have to worry about the jobs reports being negative for the market because AI is going to handle those. We're going to code out unemployment, it says right here. AI is writing the media, everything is fine. So, that's going to keep everything, nice and calm while the world falls apart. Hedges are not needed in this environment. There were a couple of stories about how, there was no put protection, nobody was hedging, everybody was piled into the upside with, absolutely no downside protection. So the market status is optimal. Inflation, unemployment, geopolitics, deficits, particularly reality, all ignored. The narrative is maximum positive. And, if the narrative isn't enough, if the stories that we tell aren't enough to boost the market, we've got the money printer 6000 XL here to print more cash to immediately support any assets that may dip as a result of the uncertainty that is unfolding here. So, what's actually going on while the market continues to hit record high after record high after record high is this. I gave the agent a prompt. I said, more of the same headlines, 2 months straight now. What is the theme of this article? Let me pop in back here so you can see me. Let's read along together. The article was on zero hedge markets. U.S. stocks extended record levels upside, capped as oil prices rose amid geopolitical instability. The theme is basically the market has become completely conditioned to buy every version of the same geopolitical de escalation story while AI enthusiasm continues to overwhelm concerns about oil, war, inflation, and physical supply constraints. The actual laws of physics are starting to descend upon the market, but the market doesn't care because all it does is smoke hopium and buy tech stocks. It's almost a continuation of the article you covered yesterday. It says main themes: record highs have become the default outcome. The article opens with futures once again near record highs. This has been the same story when I come in to trade in the morning for 2 months straight now. The market is always on the all-time high. The reasoning is familiar. Another round of Iran negotiation headlines, another round of ceasefire optimism, another assumption that Hormuz risk is fading, another dip buying session in equities. The implication is markets no longer need actual resolution. They only need the possibility of resolution. So a donkey chasing a carrot. I'm riding a donkey and I've got a carrot tied on, a string, and I've got the carrot in front of the donkey, and the donkey keeps walking towards the carrot, and the carrot keeps moving because I'm sitting on the donkey with the carrot attached to the stick, right? So this is never going to stop. The goalpost is always moving. The implication is markets no longer need actual resolution, right? The actual reality of resolution is not what the market needs. It just needs reassurance that it may happen in the future at some point. Oil refuses to cooperate now. Unlike stocks, oil is not fully embracing the narrative anymore. Every time the news headlines come out with peace and ceasefire and optimism, the oil goes down, but it doesn't go down as much. So it used to go down a whole lot. It used to drop 10 or 15% on these headlines. Now it drops a few dollars, maybe a couple of percentage points. So the oil is becoming desensitized to this. The reality is starting to build underneath that. Maybe there was never a ceasefire at all in the first place. The article notes crude remains elevated, physical markets remain tight, geopolitical risks remain active, Gulf tensions remain unresolved. Oil keeps reminding traders that the real world still consumes physical barrels. The demand for crude has not gone down. The demand has stayed the same because the oil price has not risen to obnoxious levels. Nobody really understands that there's a real crisis because the crude price is low and has stayed low around $100, relatively speaking. This is, relatively low is the phrase I use because this is about 3 times worse than the biggest oil crisis in history, right? So the oil is nowhere near its all-time high. You would think that with the biggest crisis in history that the oil would be at the all-time high as well, not the stock market. But in this backwards fantasy land that we live in, everything is, twisted around and upside down. AI is still the entire market. Another recurring theme: semiconductors, AI infrastructure, cloud spending, data centers continue driving index performance. Well, the data center narrative I can understand, but how are we going to power these data centers if there's no electricity? What's going to happen if we run out of crude oil? What's going to happen if we run out of natural gas? Natural gas is what powers these giant turbines that they use to power these data centers. So with no crude oil and no natural gas, there is no AI boom. The market just doesn't seem to understand this. Mixed geopolitical signals. This is probably the most important theme. The news flow continues to look like this: positive headlines, negotiations continue, ceasefire talks continue, diplomacy progressing, sanctions discussion active. Negative headlines: missile threats continue, regional instability continues, Hormuz remains uncertain. Investors are only reacting to one side of the equation, right? So on the notion that things get better, the stock market rallies to all-time highs. On the reality coming out that the military escalation is continuing, the rally stops, but the stock market doesn't really go down. Oil goes down, and then when more optimism headlines start to flow through, the market goes up. So the market is just going up no matter what is actually happening. The Groundhog Day market. This is the new theme lately. This is the real underlying message here. For nearly 2 months, peace headline, oil drops, stocks rally, AI stocks rally harder, new military event, market ignores it, repeat, right? That's because we have learned that AI groundhog is in control of the market right now. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing. There's a new sheriff in town. And he's going to make sure that the era of endless growth and infinite prosperity is maintained forever, right? Well, we're going to run into a little problem here. And that problem is the laws of physics. which you can avoid, but you cannot ignore indefinitely. The strait has been under blockade for 95 days, 36 minutes, and 14 seconds, thereabouts. We've lost 1.3 billion barrels of crude since the closure. We're losing 14 million barrels a day, 97 million barrels a week. We still demand 104 every day. Like I said, demand has not subsided. The world is continuing to demand crude oil at the regular rate because the prices are not high enough. We have 91 million somewhat ineffective supply. This is 13.3% of the world's supply destroyed. This is now 2.91 times the size of the worst crisis of the 1973 Arab oil embargo. The Cushing facility, according to my calculations, has about 10 hours to go before it is at operational minimum. They are going to have to do something about this. The facility cannot be allowed to operate below the minimum. Damage will occur to the facility. They are going to have to get this crude oil from somewhere. The good news is that we do have some crude oil in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to last another couple of months. We do have distillates and commercial and gasoline stocks as well to last the next couple of months. However, the Exxon and Chevron CEOs said that we're going to run out a lot sooner. I have us running out in, about 4 months here for the SPR and even a little bit longer for commercial crude. Exxon and Chevron said we're going to hit tank bottoms in about 5 weeks. So they definitely know something that I don't know. According to my calculations, it's a couple of months, but according to them, it's going to be next month. And I think that those guys know a little bit more than me about the crude oil industry, so I'm going to trust what they say over my calculations. Now, if we look at the market, if we look at the chart, we can see, of course, NASDAQ hit another record high. We're trading around 37, we're trading around 30,700. The ES 7625 almost at the high. I think 7632 was the high. We did not get above there. We're only about 10 points away. So another couple of piece headlines, we should be able to print those, record new highs relatively easily. However, there is one small problem tonight, and this is reality is starting to come back in to the mix. Here's the headline. Iran says missiles, drones targeting air bases across the Gulf after U.S. nighttime attack on Qasem Island. So, we have a full-scale escalation here with actual military action. We have missiles and drones flying towards targets. There are explosions heard in Kuwait, KSA, UAE, and Bahrain. Some ceasefire, some peace deal negotiation, right? Here's what's going on right now. 2 bases come under fresh missile attack in Kuwait. Fars and Reuters report. Iran state media says retaliation for night U.S. attack on Qasem Island. I guess we negotiate now through escalation. We escalate, we blow some things up, and we talk about it. And then we call that the framework for a peace deal, right? This is the framework for the peace deal right now. You're watching it in real time. Explosions and air raid sirens also being reported in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Bahrain. It seems that the war is popping off once again. Trump insists reports that Iran and U.S. have not been talking for days is fake news. They said they weren't talking to us anymore. Flat out. They said we're not talking anymore. Forget it. It seems Rubio also tells Congress talks are ongoing despite fresh Iranian denials, and even claims that the nuclear file is part of it. So Rubio was telling Congress earlier about all this, and that appears to be totally irrelevant because we now have a full escalation. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, everybody has completely forgotten about Ukraine. Well, there's a major war going on in Ukraine as well. Let's see if I can find the headline here. This is it. Russia unleashes its threatened mass bombardment, at least 18 killed, over 100 wounded across Ukraine. This is obviously very, very bad news. Russia has launched the biggest strike ever in Kiev. That is absolutely going to make things a lot worse over there. They've been getting worse ever since the war started a few years ago, and it's just about to get worse. So while all this is happening, what's going on with the stock market, and why is the stock market always on the all-time high if we have the biggest energy crisis ever that's about to hit, with major oil execs warning of actual supply shortages way ahead of schedule? Can somebody please explain to me what is actually happening here? Now, crude on the news is up a little bit. I would definitely expect it to be up a lot more, but there's something that I'm not seeing here. That there is some market factor that we are just not aware of. Either we've got 1 billion barrels of crude in a stealth reserve, or there is some major key point or theme that we're not aware of that is driving this. Because with two intensifying wars and the biggest energy crisis in history, this crude oil should definitely be a lot higher. So the market knows something that we don't know. We're going to find out which one of these stories is actually more accurate as we go through this. But for the next couple of weeks, it is going to be impossible to accurately tell what is happening. So we're going to get the oil inventories tomorrow. So they're going to release those at 9:30 Central Time. So I will be able to update the oil model. We will see if the Cushing facility is indeed confirmed negative or not. And if they refill the facility, which I'm sure that they are going to do, then that's going to draw off the other stockpiles, and we'll have to adjust the model as needed. So that will be tomorrow morning. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Until then, take care and good luck. Talk to you tomorrow.